There's a quote that says that jealousy is the most extreme expression of our own insecurities. It's something most of us have felt at one point or another in our lives, but sometimes jealousy can transform into one of the most dangerous emotions. It can take over your mind, instill anger, and fuel behaviors from harmless passive aggression to stalking, violence, and an obsession with control. In extreme cases, irrational jealousy can even lead to murder. Now, contrary to popular belief, material wealth and having a seemingly perfect life does not guarantee freedom from jealousy. While a person may have everything that they want and need, including a paid-for luxury apartment, a partner, and even a circle of friends, these external factors cannot fill the emotional void within some certain people. In fact, those who rely solely on possessions and transactional type of relationships may find themselves envious of others who have genuine happiness and love, regardless of material wealth they may or may not have. Now, about a year ago, I covered the case of a very unique and beautiful girl named Mary Collins, who was betrayed by a group of people that she thought were her friends. These people did the most unimaginable, horrific, and disturbing things to Mary, and there was never really a concrete reason as to why. Mary was said to be the sweetest, most innocent, and vibrant person out there, and she was trusting and forgiving of people, even if they had been mean to her in the past. Her positive outlook on life and people is something that made her special, but it's also something that made her vulnerable to people who had very bad intentions. There have been several updates about Mary's case since my first video, and I want to go over all of those, as well as go a little deeper into the details of what took place that horrible week back in 2020. This case has been getting under my skin for a year now, and I know it's affected a lot of you as well, and so I felt like there was a need to just dig a little deeper, figure out exactly what really is going on and the complexities in this case, rather than just the surface level of things. Now, the purpose of this video isn't to rehash an old case, not by any means, or to sensationalize the disturbing details. Mary's family wants for people to keep talking about what happened to her, to shine a light on the sheer evil of the suspects in her case, and to not let what happened be swept under the rug by dragging out the process for justice. It's obvious that the ringleader's hatred and jealousy played a crucial role in what happened to Mary. But the question that still plagues people familiar with this case is why? Hey guys, I'm Annie Elise. This is 10 to Life. Let's jump right in. 20-year-old Mary Santina Collins was born on July 6th to her mother, Casey Del Pezzo. She got her first name from her great-great-grandmother Mary, and her middle name from her great-grandmother Santina. Santina means saint in Italian, and that was a word that described Mary's sweet personality perfectly. She was absolutely gorgeous, with a uniquely ethereal, otherworldly look about her. She has these big, slightly wide-set brown eyes, which gave her an almost mermaid or fairy-like quality. Her long, thick hair, which she loved to dye an array of vibrant colors, complemented her imaginative, childlike spirit. Growing up, Mary lived with her grandparents, Mia and William Alderman, who had a more stable type of a household to provide for her. However, her mom and her aunts helped take care of her as well, and she had a large, close family of sisters, a brother, and numerous cousins, who all surrounded her with love and protection. It wasn't clear that anything was different about Mary at all at first. But at around 3 months old, Mia began noticing things, such as Mary having difficulty eating, missing common milestones, not making eye contact, or not recognizing herself in mirrors. For nearly 3 years, Mia took Mary to doctor after doctor, trying to find someone who could figure out what was going on with her granddaughter. Mia had raised several children, and based on her experience, she knew that something wasn't right. Finally, at 3 years old, Mary was diagnosed with something called 22q deletion syndrome. Now, 22q is the second most common genetic disorder next to Down syndrome, and it can affect any system of the body. However, most children with this diagnosis have heart, immune, learning, speech, and behavior difficulties. No person with 22q is the same, and everyone who has it has their own unique set of needs. It was also discovered that Mary had a submucous cleft palate. Now, this type of cleft palate happens when the roof of your mouth doesn't form properly while a baby is developing, and is caused by a separation of the speech muscle under the surface of the roof of the mouth. A typical cleft palate is noticed when a baby is born because it looks like an obvious opening in the roof of the mouth. Since this type is under the surface, it's much harder to see. In some cases, the cleft may be so minor that it goes unnoticed and never causes any problems at all. However, doctors told Mary's family that her cleft was really serious, and even though they were going to perform surgery, they didn't expect her to ever be able to speak normally, if at all. As she got older, she would use signs to communicate with her loved ones, but against the odds, she started to be able to speak at around 6 years old. Her earliest speech was difficult to understand, but the people closest to her and who spent the most time around her were able to make out what she was saying. Her family never gave up on helping Mary with her speech, and over time, it improved to where she was able to communicate with everyone, even though she still had this severe impediment. She would never be able to make really loud noises, like a scream, for example, but the fact that she was able to talk to people at all was a huge improvement and a huge accomplishment in itself, and truly a testament to how persevering she was. Mary's grandmother, Mia, has said that describing Mary is like trying to describe art or even music, that there aren't enough adjectives to accurately convey how special she was. Now, her 22q diagnosis gave her the mental capacity of a lesser age. For example, when she was 20 years old, she had the mental capacity of about a 15-year-old. In some areas, she might be more advanced than that, but in others, slightly less. Her personality, like I said, has been described as whimsical because she was so goofy, so loving, caring, and, most of all, forgiving. Her family has said that even though Mary was very shy, she had a very special way of seeing things that they couldn't. It's like she always saw the positive in things, always saw the positive side of all things and all people. Even though she was a little timid, especially with people outside of her family, she was said to have just a hilarious sense of humor and loved to pull pranks on people. Mary also enjoyed all types of music and enjoyed cooking. She loved to cook. She loved to dress up and do photo shoots as well. She loved all things fashion, and she had a very unique sense of fashion as well. And she used this artistic ability to create beautiful makeup looks on herself and on her friends. Just an artist through and through. Throughout elementary, middle, and high school, she always had a very small group of close friends. In high school, she dated a few boys, but nothing was ever too serious. And one of the guys that she dated in high school was named Lavi Fam, and they mostly just hung out at each other's houses and spent time with their families together, a typical high school relationship. On occasion, Lavi would take Mary out to dinner to get sushi, which ended up being one of her favorite types of foods. Lavi and Mary didn't end up dating very long, probably because Mary just wasn't really interested in the physical aspects of a relationship, like a high school boy probably would be, but she would rather just they be friends. And after they broke up, there were no hard feelings between them, and they stayed friendly acquaintance type. So they continue with their high school lives, and then they graduate. Now, like it often happens after high school, Mary's friends started to dwindle. While all of the kids her age were growing up around her, going to college, starting careers, moving out, and transitioning into their adult lives, Mary, who still had the mindset of a teenager, wasn't quite ready for that yet. Her friends still kept in touch, but for the most part, they started naturally drifting apart. You would think that someone as sweet and innocent as Mary wouldn't really deal too much with bullying. I mean, it would be like bullying a puppy. She was just this sweet, innocent girl. She was so nice, silly, and genuinely kind that you'd have to be a very cold-hearted person to be mean to someone like her. But as we know, kids can be mean for no reason. Now, in school, she wasn't overly mistreated, but her siblings and whole family were fiercely protective of her, and they wanted to shield her from anything that could unnecessarily hurt her feelings. So after high school, you'd expect any petty bullying going on to stop after people started to grow up and move further away from the peer pressure of seeming cool by bullying. But for some reason, Mary had found herself in the line of fire of one particularly disturbed individual named Kelly Lavery. Kelly Lavery was 24 years old, and out of nowhere, this grown woman began targeting Mary on social media. She would go from making random, rude, and honestly just childish comments under Mary's photos to apologizing and pretending like she was Mary's friend and wanted to be friends with her. It was very bizarre. Now, some of these comments included things like, "Ew, nobody would want you. If I were you, I would want to disappear as soon as possible." Just really cruel and mean things. She would then emotionally manipulate Mary, who was always trying to seek friends, and she would do this by telling her, "Oh, we made up," even though she previously said things to Mary as awful as telling her to take her own life. The fact that Kelly even wanted anything to do with Mary was weird in itself. It's not like they were constantly thrust together in the same social circles or in the same friend groups. Mary didn't really have many people that she hung out with on a regular basis, and the only social connection she had with Kelly was that she was dating and living with Lavi Pham, who Mary briefly dated in high school. So then why was Kelly so hell-bent on inserting herself into Mary's life? Some think it was maybe one of those situations where a girl will go and lurk on her boyfriend's exes, just out of curiosity to see what they look like, maybe see what kind of hobbies they were interested in, things like that. Maybe Kelly then realized how gorgeous and interesting Mary was and became instantly jealous of her. But regardless, it's just weird that she decided to manipulate this girl into thinking that she wanted to be friends one minute and then bully her the next, and then apologize like a Jekyll and Hyde mean girl. It seemed like after she found out more about Mary and how vulnerable and maybe even naive she was, messing around with her became kind of like a game to Kelly. Sometimes Lavi would even join in on the immature comments too. Mary's family, who could see her social media and comments on her photos, were concerned about this, and they were concerned about this Kelly girl who clearly had some serious issues. When Mary told them that Kelly was her friend, her family tried to caution her about trusting someone whose intentions weren't clear and who may have just been pretending to be nice for a laugh. Some other comments that Kelly made to Mary were things like, "You should work on being less ugly," or "You're a dumb bitch. Also, I hope you get hit by a Walmart truck." Just really normal comments that adults make to each other. Obviously not. I'm being sarcastic if you didn't catch that there. She would also play immature mind games with Mary. Like on one occasion, Kelly pretended to be Lavi to test Mary to see if she would flirt with him back. Now, I highly doubt that she did, but Kelly claimed that Mary was a bad friend for flirting with Lavi, and it was all just so high school and stupid. Then after these little tests, Kelly texted Mary and said, "You know I have a genius IQ, right? What the hell else am I supposed to do when I get bored?" Now, Mary already had a lot of insecurities. She was self-conscious about things like her speech impediment, her glasses, and the last thing she needed was some girl harassing her for no reason and making her feel bad about herself. Sometimes the most dangerous people are those who appear to have everything, but remain perpetually dissatisfied and unappreciative. When everything is effortlessly handed to them, the significance of possessions and experiences can gradually diminish. Consequently, these people who have unlimited access to anything they want may eventually grow bored and seek out alternative forms of entertainment. That sort of seemed like the case for Kelly Lavery. Kelly, who was born to parents Patrick and Karen Lavery, had a very privileged upbringing. Her father is what's known as a chief enterprise architect, which in simple terms is like a regular architect, except instead of buildings, they create blueprints for a company's technology systems. This is an extremely lucrative career, and Kelly's family lived in a home worth well over $1 million. However, she was one of those kinds of people who made the fact that her parents had a lot of money her entire personality. By the way she talked about herself, you would have thought that she was a Hilton sister or something like that, maybe a Kardashian, who knows. Not only did she think that her parents' money somehow made her better than everybody else, but she even verbalized it. In some of the cringiest messages between her and Mary, she would write things like, "I graduated with a 4.0 in honors. I'm living rent-free, bills-free. My entire life is handed to me on a diamond-encrusted platter. So I don't think so, sweetie. Not my fault. I'm so perfect. I can get a cold-hearted to propose in 4 months." Now, I'm not sure if she thought that her grades in high school were somehow relevant to her adult life, because remember, she's 24, or if the fact that she was mooching off of her parents was some kind of triumph or flex. But the fact that she casually used a racial slur when she is very much a privileged white girl just shows her actual level of intelligence, in my opinion. One of the most embarrassing sequences of text messages between Mary and Kelly came after Kelly made some of her rude comments, and Mary told Kelly to just leave her alone. Kelly then texted and asked Mary, "Do you like my personality?" Mary, who was currently upset by something Kelly had said, replied, "No, because you're acting like you're still in high school." Kelly then said back to Mary, "See, you want to know why it doesn't matter? My parents are millionaires. I get to have a bad personality. Are your parents private jet rich? Tesla rich? Designer shit rich? Does your daddy make $700,000 annually? I can treat people however I want." Now, honestly, if Kelly weren't being serious, you'd kind of have to laugh at that message. Who says stuff like that? Especially a grown adult. 24, I get it, isn't like grown, but like it's grown enough. The fact that she would think that a person like Mary would even care about any of those things shows how little Kelly actually knew about her. The fact that she based her entire worth on the amount of money that her dad makes every year when she's a grown woman just shows how pathetic and insecure she really is. Even though by 2020, Mary was now 20 years old, her family was still extremely protective of her, and maybe even a little overbearing, depending on who you talk to. She often longed for independence, but again, her 22q diagnosis made it difficult for her to navigate herself around, especially in a large city like Charlotte, North Carolina, where they lived. Charlotte is a major city and a commercial hub in North Carolina. It's a popular place for younger people to live because of its lower than average cost of living, also the nightlife, the breweries, music venues, and very unique bars. Charlotte is also the home to at least 15 different colleges, with the biggest being the University of North Carolina. One particularly trendy neighborhood in Charlotte is known as NODA, which stands for North Davidson. It has a thriving art scene and a more alternative and eclectic vibe, so a lot of young aspiring artists and musicians live and hang out in that area. So Mary wasn't able to work or drive, and she had to rely on others for rides and to help her get to where she needed to go. Her carefree nature and inability to perform tasks like making change or managing money caused Mary's grandma Mia to be in charge of her finances. Mary was also on the family phone plan with her grandparents, and Mia monitored her spending and gradually would dole out her monthly disability money so that she wouldn't frivolously spend it. Mia also had a tracking app on Mary's phone, probably like Find My Friends or Life 360, but she had this so that on the rare occurrence Mary was somewhere without her, Mia could always check her location to make sure that she was in a safe place. Had been gradually trying to help her gain some more independence, and she started using Uber here and there, tapping into it a little bit so that she didn't always have to depend on people for rides. Learning how to use Uber would have been valuable because if she ever found herself in a situation where she wanted to leave or if she couldn't find her way home, she could always request an Uber from her phone, which would locate her, pick her up, and drive her home safely. Now, as we can all remember, the beginning of the pandemic was a time of fear and uncertainty. It was especially hard for kids and even young adults who were used to being able to go and hang out with friends, go wherever they wanted, and see people at school or work. It was tough to then just go right into lockdown. For an extrovert, quarantine and nationwide stay-at-home mandates were a complete and total nightmare. Even after the initial hysteria had subsided, social distancing was still a challenge for outgoing people. Mary had already been quarantining for weeks by the end of March 2020, and she was starting to go a little bit stir-crazy, having to stay home, and really longed for more friends and people her age to hang out with. So on Saturday, March 28th, the governor of North Carolina issued a state of emergency mandate and shut down all schools and all non-essential businesses. Most of us experienced similar circumstances in our own home states, and it lasted a lot longer than I think anyone was expecting. That same day, Mary got a message on Facebook from Kelly Lavery, and this message was asking her to come over to her and Lavi's apartment in the Nodat area. Mary was a little apprehensive just because of her and Kelly's tumultuous history on social media, but Kelly had apologized for some of the mean things that she said, and Mary, who was always understanding and forgiving of everyone, really thought that she could have a new potential friendship with Kelly. She was almost desperate to get out of the house, too, and she had known Lavi from her past, so it's not like she'd be showing up to hang out with complete strangers. However, Mary's family absolutely did not want her to leave. Not only were they weary of Kelly, but they feared that Mary wasn't able to understand or grasp the magnitude of the pandemic and the importance of social distancing. Mary told her grandma Mia that everything would be fine and that her and Kelly were just going to have a movie marathon, but that didn't calm Mia's nerves, not at all. Regardless, Mary had made up her mind that she was going, and Kelly ordered an Uber to pick Mary up from her house and bring her over to her and Lavi's apartment. When the Uber arrived, Mia even tried to intercept Mary leaving by asking the driver to please not accept the ride. But the driver looked at Mia and said, "She's grown, I'm taking her." The Uber drove Mary to Kelly and Lavi's apartment complex, which was called the Yards of Noda. Mary had no way of knowing that what was supposed to be a fun night of just hanging out and watching movies would turn into an absolute nightmare. Mia, who was still worried at home, checked Mary's location on her phone to make sure that she arrived at the apartment safely. She texted her a few times to check in and inquire about when they might expect her to come home, but Mary didn't respond. Mia hoped that Mary had just gotten distracted from how much fun she was having with her friends, or, at the worst case scenario, that maybe her phone had died. Mary's sister tried reaching out to her as well, but there wasn't any activity on her phone or her social media accounts at all, so they all started to get pretty worried. However, their worries subsided a little when one of Mary's sisters saw a post on Lavi's Twitter account, and the post was of him, Kelly, and Mary goofing around, walking around the apartment and retrieving a sushi delivery. So Mia figured that Lavi had remembered that sushi was one of Mary's favorite foods, and it seemed like her new friends were making sure that she was having a good time, eating her favorite food, goofing off. There was a point in the video, too, where Kelly had her arm around Mary and smiled at her in the elevator like they had been friends for years. However, at the end of the video, Kelly made a hand gesture that resembles either a rock on or devil horns, or it might have been an upside-down peace sign. Regardless, this simple hand signal would be an ominous foreshadowing of Kelly's true evil nature. Mia waited and worried all night about Mary because she wasn't answering any calls or texts, and they hadn't discussed her spending the night out, so where was she? Not knowing what was going on made it so Mia couldn't even sleep, and the next day, after still not hearing from Mary, Mia decided to go over to Kelly and Lavi's apartment herself to pick Mary up and bring her home. Now let me paint the scene, because everything was already super chaotic anyway, with Mia and the rest of the state trying to prepare for the lockdown in this massive pandemic and trying to collect enough food, the godforsaken toilet paper that we all can remember, and other essential items. Mia hated having to come off as overbearing, but she just needed to have Mary safe and at home so that she didn't have one more thing to be worrying about. So when Mia got to the Yard's apartment complex, she wasn't able to get in right away because it was a gated community, of course, and it was coded protected. So she had to wait for someone to go in the gate first so that she could then follow behind. And then she had to wait for someone to open each door after that to enter the building. When she finally made it up to the third-story apartment, she knocked on the door and waited for somebody to answer. When nobody came, she knocked and knocked, louder and louder, until she was finally yelling, "I guess I'll have to call 911. Finally, Kelly opened the door, and she had a look on her face like Mary's grandma was the last person that she expected to see. She told Mia that Mary wasn't there and that she had already left. Right then and there, Mia knew she was lying. First of all, Mary had recently broken her glasses and would have had no way of just leaving the apartment by herself. She already had a hard time getting around without assistance, and the fact that she was now without her glasses would have made it nearly impossible. Second of all, Mia knew that Mary wouldn't have just left without charging her phone or telling Mia what she was going to be doing. And the last location on Mary's phone was at their apartment. And Mia had a feeling that she still was in there. There was no activity on Mary's bank card, so her actually being somewhere else was just very unlikely. She just didn't know why Kelly would be lying about this. So she asked Kelly if she could come in and look around, and Kelly reluctantly let her inside. Mia frantically searched around the apartment, calling Mary's name. She ripped open the shower curtain, looked in closets, but Mary was nowhere to be seen. However, while Mia searching all of these places, Kelly didn't let her go into the back master bedroom, as if that's not sketchy at all. Mia told Kelly she wasn't leaving until she saw what was behind that bedroom door. But Kelly told her that her friends were in there and that Mia was embarrassing her with all of this commotion. Kelly then told Mia she needed to leave. Mia backed up to the doorway of the apartment and she started crying and begging her to tell her where Mary was. Kelly looked at Mia and said, "I couldn't give an F about Mary." Mia then started screaming Mary's name past Kelly's head, hoping that Mary would come out of that back bedroom. A neighbor who heard what was going on stepped out into the hall and asked if there was a problem and if she should call somebody. Mia told the neighbor to go ahead and call somebody because she needed her granddaughter. Mia looked at Kelly and said, "Is Lavi back there? Is Lavi back there in that room?" And in the most bone-chilling and condescending way, Kelly said, "Yeah, that's it. It's Lavi in there." Mia asked Kelly to go and get Lavi. So she went back to the master bedroom, and after a few minutes, Lavi came out following Kelly back to the front door. Mia recalls that Kelly stood between her and Lavi and was in control of the entire situation the whole time, not really letting him answer any of her questions. That's when Mia looked down and saw that Kelly was holding a hammer in her hand, down by her side, but completely composed and cool as a cucumber. Mia looked at Kelly in the face and said, "You can't hit me hard enough with that hammer to make me forget about Mary." Now at that point, something flipped in Kelly, and she all of a sudden started talking really caring and really compassionately and told Mia that she cared about Mary and would help her find her. Now, it would be pretty hard to take someone who is talking nice to you seriously while they're simultaneously holding a hammer in their hand and were just acting aggressive moments before. Even though Kelly and Lavi were both claiming Mary had left, apparently neither of them had actually seen her leave. They just somehow knew that she did, which, okay, sure, right, okay, good story. Anyways, by the end of the conversation, Mia had no choice but to leave. And she started looking around the complex and other places nearby that Mary could have gotten to on her own, but there was no sign of her anywhere. Mia started to become frantic, and she informed her family what was going on. She called 911 to explain the situation and requested that an officer come by to help her find Mary. Whether it be motherly instinct or divine intuition, Mia just knew that Mary was inside that apartment. However, it didn't seem like law enforcement was taking her seriously. She tried her best to express the urgency of the situation, but it seemed like her pleas were not being heard. Mary's family spent another entire night desperately worrying about Mary, who they never ever had lost contact with before for any period of time, let alone days. The fact that Mia could see that there was absolutely no activity on Mary's phone made everything that much worse. On March 31st, 2020, an official missing persons report was finally filed with the Mecklenburg Police Department, even though Mary's family knew this wasn't going to be enough. First of all, in their hearts and minds, they knew where Mary was. She wasn't missing. She was either being held against her will or something horrible had happened to her inside that apartment. Mary's mom made flyers to pass out and post around the community, and at the bottom of the flyer, she included the name and number of the lead detective that was assigned to Mary's case, Jonathan Gaskin. However, at the beginning of the investigation into Mary's whereabouts, a different officer ended up being the first person to show up to the Yard Apartments to follow up on that initial 911 call. When he knocked on the door, nobody answered, so he left. Mia wasn't satisfied with him not speaking to anyone, so she decided to go back to the apartment herself again. She decided to call the office of the apartment building, but again, due to the pandemic, they were all working from home. The manager of the apartment told her that he would still be able to review the surveillance footage from home and that he would take a look at it later in the day. Later that day, Jonathan Gaskin, the lead detective, called Mia and told her that he wasn't going to be able to make it to the apartment complex that day, but that if she really wanted to, she could call 911 again. Mia tried to explain to Detective Gaskin again just how urgent this situation was and what kind of danger she believed Mary to be in. But Detective Gaskin told her that he could work the case remotely, and physically going to the apartment wasn't necessary. That would be the first of many times that Jonathan Gaskin minimized and trivialized Mary's family's concerns. It's almost like he was thinking, the woman is 20 years old, that family is crazy, she can take care of herself, she's fine. But he clearly didn't understand the gravity of the issue, and even more than that, he didn't know Mary. Mia told Detective Gaskin that she had already spoken to the apartment manager herself, and that they agreed to review the surveillance footage. But instead of taking that as a great opportunity to find out for sure whether Mary left the apartment or not, he just replied, "That's good." He didn't even go himself or even send another officer to review the footage with the manager. Like everything else, he basically shrugged it off and considered it just another way of Mary's family being neurotic. Mia could see that she was getting nowhere with Gaskin, so per his advice, she called 911 after they got off the phone. And again, she begged for help in finding Mary. After that, Mary's mom, Casey, and one of her friends decided to meet Mia at the apartment complex. They waited for an officer to arrive, and when one finally responded, he went with Casey up to the 3rd floor and knocked on the door of Kelly and Lavi's apartment. This time, Lavi was the one to answer the door, and he refused to let the officer in to search. But he did allow Casey inside. She nervously looked around the apartment, not knowing what she would find, and was feeling disturbed by the fact that she was now alone with the last people to have seen her daughter. Lavi even let Casey go into that back bedroom, and when she peered in the room, someone was asleep on the bed, covered with a blanket. She couldn't see who that person was, but Lavi told her that it was Kelly. So Casey kept moving. She wasn't aware that there was another bathroom in the master bedroom, so she left the apartment once again without any answers. The officer at the scene then got a hold of the apartment manager, and for some reason, this idiot officer told the manager not to continue looking at the surveillance footage. He incorrectly told the manager that they needed to obtain a warrant to review the footage, but this wasn't the case at all. The manager himself didn't need a warrant to review surveillance footage, and the fact that the officer advised him of something that wasn't even true would be one of the many huge mistakes in the handling of this case. Mary's family even called the apartment's corporate office to get permission, and they told her family that they could review the footage without a warrant. Days later, when the police finally did decide to go look at the footage, it was too late. Because being that it was all taking place at the end of the month, the day that the new month started, all of the previous footage was erased to make room for a new month's worth of footage. So had the officer just not said anything, or if he would have asked the manager to save the footage until they could receive this unnecessary warrant, the proof of whether Mary left or not could have been saved. And to make matters even more devastating and unbearably frustrating, the footage was deleted just 1 hour before the police decided to finally ask to see the footage. In light of the police's mishandling of a crucial piece of evidence and their lack of concern for Mary's disappearance, her family found themselves with no alternative but to take matters into their own hands. They felt utterly abandoned by the very institution that is there to serve and protect. To them, the Mecklenburg police appeared indifferent and uninterested. Despite this overwhelming feeling of isolation, their unwavering love for Mary provided them with the strength and the determination necessary to conduct their own investigation. The thought of leaving Mary's fate to chance was simply not an option, because to them, her life was invaluable, and it should have been to the police as well. Their commitment to finding Mary was obvious as they independently organized search parties, conducted investigations through social media, approached anyone who might have information, and distributed countless flyers to anyone willing to listen. During this time, Lavi and Kelly would even make posts and even send Mary's mom screenshots of people that they should look into, all in an attempt to make it seem like they cared at all about what happened to Mary. No one was buying it though, and this strong family took shifts sitting outside the apartment to make sure that nobody could take anything out or get rid of any potential evidence. However, the police informed them that Lavi and Kelly were starting to feel threatened by them and that they needed to stop harassing them and quit knocking on the door. At one point, Detective Gaskin had the audacity to say to Mia, "Don't you understand she's not in that apartment?" As if he even had a single clue. During the family looking into everything they could on both Lavi and Kelly's social media accounts, they saw photos that Lavi had posted with another male, and it appeared that they were during the same dates when Mary was at the apartment. In one photo, the other male even had a knife in his hand. So her family and Mary's friends made posts asking if anyone knew who this other male in the photo was, and a mutual friend recognized him and said that he was 22-year-old James or Jimmy Salerno. Jimmy and Lavi had grown up down the street from each other, and they were childhood friends. The unnamed friend who identified him contacted Jimmy and asked him what was going on and if he had been at that apartment with Lavi when Mary was there, and Jimmy told him that he had. So family, friends, and members of the community assisted in searching for Mary everywhere they could in nearby areas. Her family hired drones and bloodhounds, and searchers trekked through wooded areas, construction sites, and even picked through dumpsters and trash cans with absolutely no help from the police. Despite all of their efforts, Mary's family still felt in their hearts that she never actually left the apartment. And in another absolutely devastating letdown, Mary's family got permission by the apartment complex to hire their own team of bloodhounds to sniff around the apartment. And all they needed was a signature from the lead detective on the case, Jonathan Gaskin. However, after they called and tried desperately to reach him, he never answered or got back to them in time, and the opportunity to utilize the dogs was missed. But that's not all. It had been 7 entire days of Mary being missing before the Mecklenburg Police Department would actually start taking the situation seriously. And up until that point, her family had no idea why. Well, it turns out that after a former homicide detective reached out to the department to inquire about Mary's case, he was informed that they received an anonymous tip that Mary had done this before and had just gone MIA for a couple days in the past. This complete and utterly false tip that the department just accepted as fact with no other reasoning made officials waste valuable days in the investigation. Even though it was anonymous, I think we can all assume who was probably responsible for that helpful tip. If Gaskin or anyone else working on the case would have just taken 20 minutes to look for other missing person reports pertaining to Mary, any runaway reports, or just simply asked her family about her history, they would have known that that was a lie and a clear attempt to stall the investigation. Mary's grandma Mia was completely physically and emotionally exhausted. She had advocated for Mary her entire life, always fighting for her to get the care that she deserved. She never imagined that she'd have to fight so hard at this stage in her life, after Mary had come so far. She'd done everything in her power for 20 years to keep Mary as safe as possible. And the fact that her worst nightmare of losing her was now starting to become a reality was almost too hard to consider. Mia's instincts persistently drew her toward the Yard apartment complex. She even resorted to sleeping in the parking lot, driven by this unshakable feeling that Mary was nearby, and she could not bear the thought of abandoning her there. On April 3rd, 2020, officers received a credible tip that would finally validate what Mary's family had been saying all along. The person who gave the tip told the officers that Mary was in fact still inside the apartment. He told them that he spoke to Jimmy Salerno, who told him that he attended a party at Lavi and Kelly's apartment, and when he arrived, they had Mary tied up in a bathtub, had beaten her to death, and that they put her body inside a mattress. He said they planned on burning the mattress later. So Detective Gaskin finally decided to make use of himself, and he headed over to the apartment to talk to Lavi and Kelly. It took some convincing, but they let him inside the apartment. He searched each room and noted that the apartment was absolutely filthy. He even had Kelly and Lavi lift all of the mattresses, but he still didn't see any sign of Mary. The next day, the informant called the police again and assured them that Gaskin had missed Mary somehow. He told them that she wasn't just under the mattress, but actually inside either the mattress or possibly the box spring. Later that day, they received another tip from a different informant, alleging that Lavi was trying to pay somebody $4,000 to remove something from the apartment. That's a lot of money to just move one thing, even if it's a particularly large item or piece of furniture or heavy item. The informant also provided information about how another possible suspect, a young woman named America, an 18-year-old that Jimmy had met on Tinder and only briefly started dating, was possibly involved. That informant stated that he met up with Jimmy and America at a park, and Jimmy confided in him that he, America, Mary, Kelly, and Lavi were all hanging out at the Yard's apartment. He said that he went into a bedroom for a little while, and when he came out, Lavi and Kelly had tied up Mary, and they were beating her in the head with a bottle. Apparently, he wasn't too fazed by this because he alleged that he went to sleep and then woke up to Lavi texting him and telling him to come into the bathroom. In the bathroom, he said that he saw Mary in the bathtub and witnessed her tied up and bloody, all while being stationed inside that tub. He said that the reasoning behind all of this was that Lavi and Kelly wanted to have a threesome with Mary, but she refused. He then said that Lavi forced him to clean up the bloody mess, which is kind of unbelievable because Jimmy is a pretty big guy, over 6 feet tall, and Lavi looks like a greasier, scrawnier version of like the little Gollum guy from Lord of the Rings. So how he somehow forced him to do something makes no sense. But regardless, Jimmy said that he then helped Lavi and Kelly wrap Mary up in saran wrap, garbage bags, and duct tape, and he then helped them put her inside the mattress. So after hearing this new information, the Mecklenburg police obtained an official search warrant and knocked on the door to Lavi and Kelly's apartment. Lavi answered the door, and they called Kelly's name, but didn't get a response. They looked around the apartment and ended up finding Kelly laying on a bed, and it appeared that she was passed out. Now, Kelly was very difficult to wake, and officers thought that maybe she had been under the influence and may have even needed medical assistance. But when the paramedics arrived, they determined that Kelly was fine. Kelly and Lavi were instructed to wait outside the apartment for police to conduct their search. In addition to evidence of drug use throughout the apartment, they spotted saran wrap and trash bags inside the kitchen, and they started to worry that what the informant said could actually be true. So they made their way to the master bedroom, and they zeroed in on the bed, which was piled high with a bunch of stuff that seemed out of place. Before cleaning off the bed, they found a bloody knife in the corner of the bedroom, and next to a bookshelf, they found Mary's ID and debit card. In the master bathroom, they located a serrated knife in the sink, and luminol indicated blood on the bath mats and the shower curtain. There was a mop bucket next to the bathtub, and the shower walls, floor, sinks, and areas of the bathroom walls just lit up with a reaction to the luminol as well, indicating the presence of blood all over. Later, forensic testing concluded that despite a clear attempt to clean up, Mary's DNA was found in 6 places, and Lavi and Kelly were the 2 most major contributors of DNA located on the knives. Next, they cleaned off the bed and started to lift the mattress. Had Detective Gaskin lifted the mattress himself the first time, he would have realized that it was much heavier than a mattress of that size normally is and should have been. After they removed the fitted sheet and the mattress cover, it was revealed that the mattress was upside down and had tape going all the way around it on the side seams and the corners. When they sliced through the tape, inside the mattress, they found several flattened cardboard boxes, which clearly belonged to Lavi and Kelly, due to their names being printed on the shipping label stickers. When they lifted the flattened boxes, they made the gruesome discovery of Mary Collins' body, wrapped in duct tape, saran wrap, and trash bags. Inside, they discovered that Mary had been completely doused in pumpkin spice shower gel and in dish detergent in a disturbing attempt to mask the smell. Later, forensic testing concluded that fingerprints inside the trash bags containing Mary's body were a match to America, the 18-year-old who was dating Jimmy. Luminol indicated that there had been blood cleaned off the mattress topper, and in addition to Mary, a towel, tape packaging, and white trash bags containing several t-shirts with suspected blood stains were all found concealed in the mattress as well. When searching in the area outside of the apartment, they discovered mattress springs and material that appeared to be mattress stuffing, which would have been removed to make room for Mary's body. Now, if you can even believe it, guys, it gets even worse. Next, after making this discovery, the medical examiner comes in. And the medical examiner had the daunting task of figuring out what exactly happened to Mary. Upon her arrival, the medical examiner began by removing her from 2 large black trash bags that appeared to have been taped together. Inside, Mary was completely wrapped from head to toe in duct tape and saran wrap. There was a black t-shirt wrapped around her upper neck, socks wrapped around the middle of her neck, and a red shirt wrapped around her ankles. It's been speculated that these items were wrapped like this to possibly soak up any blood from seeping out of the tape and the saran wrap. After removing all of the items off of Mary, it was discovered that she had over 133 slice wounds and 24 stab wounds, all of which were shallow enough to not have caused her death. These wounds would have occurred in an attempt to torture her, not kill her. There was also indications that Mary had been assaulted in a very violent and sexual way, due to the presence of DNA from 2 males being found on her body. The DNA results from this male substance were inconclusive due to an attempt of cleaning off the evidence, but Mary had only been with 2 males and 2 other females that night, so it's not really hard to figure out who that DNA belonged to. The night that Mary was found, neighbors who lived at the Yard apartments stood outside on their balconies and porches and watched the commotion as more and more police officers, crime scene investigators, and an ambulance showed up to the complex.
2 days later, the witness called police again, insisting Mary's body was there. This time, detectives went in with a search warrant, shocking neighbors at the Noda apartment complex.
I'm losing it. You guys, what if someone just got murdered?
During all of this, someone alerted Mia that they had seen an ambulance leaving the apartments, and this gave her temporary hope that Mary had been found alive and was maybe being taken to the hospital. She arrived at one hospital, but was told that Mary wasn't there. She left and hurried to another hospital, but due to all of the COVID restrictions, she wasn't able to go inside. However, almost right after she was denied entry, a family member called her cell phone and told her that she needed to come home. After she got there, 2 officers in uniform made their way up the driveway, which is never a good sign. The family had never seen these 2 officers before, but they were the ones to break the news about the horrifying discovery at the apartment. Mia couldn't even stand to listen to all of the details and was almost in too much of a grief-stricken rage to fully comprehend what they were telling her. The family was also confused as to why the lead detective, Jonathan Gaskin, wasn't the one to deliver this news. Maybe it was because he couldn't face them, knowing that they had been right all along? Who knows? Now that the Mecklenburg police knew that Mary was in fact murdered in Lavi and Kelly's apartment, they needed to start building their case and figure out what exactly happened. You'd assume that this would be a pretty cut and dry case, but they needed to determine what level of involvement each person there that night had in Mary's death and in the cover-up. During their investigation, police uncovered text messages between Lavi and Kelly that happened during the time that Mary was inside their home. The conversations proved that after they had ordered sushi, Lavi began drugging Mary without her knowledge, with substances including Xanax and even Molly. Lavi would text Kelly things like, "another bar down," referring to Xanax bars, which is a medication used for anxiety and panic disorders. It's classified as a benzo and is known as a downer for its relaxing effect. Now, Xanax can impair a person's coordination, lower their blood pressure, make it difficult to speak, and even increase libido. People on Xanax can also experience decreased mental alertness and become confused. Where Molly is also known as MDMA or ecstasy. It's known as a party drug, and it's popular at raves due to its stimulating properties. It would definitely be considered an upper and can give users the euphoric high of amphetamines and the psychedelic effects of hallucinogens. Mixing uppers and downers is extremely dangerous and can even lead to overdose and death. The side effects of mixing uppers and downers include intense anxiety, high blood pressure, irregular heartbeat, suppressed breathing, cardiac arrest, organ damage, loss of consciousness, and overdose. So you can imagine that someone like Mary, who had probably never experimented with any type of illicit drug, would have probably become incredibly confused, anxious, and afraid about what was happening to her. There's no telling at what point she may have realized that these people she trusted were doing something horrible to her, or what went through her mind when they started attacking her. There was evidence that Lavi had texted and told Jimmy what he was doing as well, so the only person who was unaware of what was going on was Mary herself. Right after the discovery of Mary's bodies, 3 of the suspects were brought in for questioning, and in true piece of trash fashion, they all tried to blame everything on each other and minimize their own involvement as much as possible. Lavi Pham was the first to be questioned, and detectives were startled to see that he had a serious cut on his arm. Ironically, he had it wrapped in saran wrap, and he told them that he had cut himself playing with a knife. Lavi told the investigators that he did know Mary, but that she had just come over to hang out with his girlfriend Kelly, and that he was mostly hanging out with Jimmy and Jimmy's date, America. This kind of went against the video, though, that he posted on his Twitter, which was of him, along with Mary and Kelly, getting sushi and strolling around the apartment. He told them that the next day he saw Mary leave the apartment and had gotten her own ride to a photo shoot, but he hadn't heard from her or seen her since. When the detectives made it obvious that they didn't buy his story of Mary leaving, he suddenly didn't want to answer any more questions and immediately asked for a lawyer. The next day, detectives conducted their first interview with Kelly Lavery, and she started off by telling them about how she asked Mary to come over for a movie marathon and a girls' night, and how she ordered her an Uber to bring her to the apartment. Her story was pretty much the same as Lavi's, but she added the fact that Mary and Jimmy didn't get along, so that the girls just stuck to themselves before Mary left their house for her photo shoot. According to her, she tried her best to help look for Mary. The detectives then started asking more specific questions, and it became obvious that they knew more than Kelly thought, and then she too requested a lawyer. Then we go to the third piece of trash, Jimmy. Jimmy Salerno was next after he had been arrested from his parents' home the night that Mary was discovered. He basically passed the buck entirely off on Kelly, Lavi, and the chick he was dating, America, which I'm sure America had to have been asking herself, what the hell did I get myself into? She barely knew any of these people and had only just met Jimmy, and now here she was lumped in together with these three evil monsters. The question was America an evil monster too? Or did she just get mixed up in something that she had no intention of being involved in? America didn't do herself any favors for making herself look like an innocent bystander, because after she caught wind of what was going on, she took off across the country, all the way to Colorado. However, on May 7th, whether it be due to the advice from others or if she just had a moment of, conscience, I don't know, she took herself to the police station. And then she was extradited back to North Carolina. She didn't even speak to investigators before asking for a lawyer, and it wouldn't be until October that she finally decided to answer some questions in the presence of an attorney. America explained how she had met Jimmy on Tinder and how she became somewhat familiar with Lavi and Kelly after hanging out and spending the night with them and Jimmy for about a week before Mary's death. She said that on the night that Mary was killed, Jimmy called her and asked her to come over because there was a weird girl there. When she got there, Jimmy, Kelly, and Lavi were all doing drugs, including the drugs that Lavi had given to Mary, as well as cocaine, meth, and Roxy's. Now, I can't even imagine the amount of sweaty, teeth-grinding, annoying, chaotic energy that she walked into. She said that it was the first time that she'd ever met Mary, and that she didn't see her doing any of the drugs, at least not willingly or knowingly. America then said that she only did just a little bit of cocaine and a little bit of Molly, which, I don't know about you, but from everything I've heard, people don't just do a little cocaine here and there, especially if there is like an endless supply. She said that while they were all hanging out, Kelly and Lavi tried to convince Mary to have a threesome with them, but she said no. America said they then propositioned her as well, but she wasn't interested either, and then she decided to go to bed in the front bedroom. Again, this to me is highly doubtful. She had just taken 2 different uppers, which depending on the quality, cocaine can last for around 2 hours, and Molly up to 8 hours. So it's pretty unlikely that she just went and dozed off to sleep and didn't hear or witness anything that was going on inside that apartment. No less an entire murder. Anyway, according to America, the next morning she woke up about 7 a.m. to take her mom to work. Jimmy would later come and pick America up because she had to leave the car with her mom to use later. So Jimmy drove with America back to the apartment, and when they went in, they walked back into Lavi and Kelly's bedroom, and Jimmy shut the door behind them. She said that one of them then opened the bathroom door, and she was disgusted by the sight of blood everywhere, but horrified and afraid when she saw Mary in the bathtub. She had cuts all over her body, and a large deep cut on her neck underneath a chain collar attached to a dog leash. America claims that when she saw this, she immediately wanted to go home, but when she asked Jimmy if they could go, the three apparently told her that if she didn't help clean up the mess, then they would do the same thing to her that they did to Mary. Lavi gave Jimmy some money and ordered him and America to go to the store to pick up some cleaning supplies, including bleach. When they returned, America said that Kelly held a knife up to her neck and forced her to wrap up Mary's body in tape, saran wrap, and bags. And the entire time, Jimmy and Lavi were laughing and joking about the awful things that they did to her. I guess in that moment, America realized that Jimmy wasn't who she thought he was, which, go figure. She said that Lavi told her that he and Jimmy had both assaulted Mary in a sexual way, cut her neck, and then, as she was bleeding out, they made her watch Lavi and Kelly have sex. That is seriously one of the most disgusting and twisted things I think I've ever heard. Even though all of their accounts vary, the one consistent detail was that Kelly was the ringleader. America said that Kelly stood back and gave orders while the other three cleaned up the bathroom. While it might have been thought that Kelly was just a Charles Manson type who didn't physically kill his victims and just gave his followers instruction, that wasn't the case for this group. Even though Kelly didn't help in the cleanup, based on what the three talked about while they were cleaning, it was obvious that Kelly was one of the main perpetrators of the violence that took place against Mary. She had apparently gone primal and lost control while she was stabbing Mary, and then accidentally cut Lavi on the arm, which coincided with the severe cut on his arm that he had during his interrogation. Once the bathroom was clean, Jimmy and Lavi cut open the mattress, took out the springs, took out some of the stuffing, and began packing it with clothing and cardboard boxes so that it would still maintain its shape after they put Mary inside. Just thinking about the fact that Mary's mom came to look for her in the apartment and Kelly was laying on the mattress is so disturbing. I can't even comprehend what level of disturbed you would have to be to willingly do that. After Mary was placed inside of the mattress, they taped it closed and made the bed like normal. Like one of the informants corroborated, America said that Lavi began texting different people trying to find someone with a truck who could help him haul away a mattress.
Let's just talk about this case in general terms. I think most people hear sort of the basics of it and are pretty shocked by it. How would you describe this crime?
I think shocking is the perfect way to describe it. This is a case that there's so many things about it that just, I think, shocked every one of us that was involved with it. You have, such a young victim who had so much ahead of her in life. She was, I think, taken advantage of by people she should have trusted or she trusted. And I think that's what just gets you so much more about this case. And it's just absolutely, the nature of the crime was just horrendous. I struggle to think of a crime that's just really more shocking that we've recently looked at.
Is there any way to explain this? That's what people keep asking. Why did this happen?
That's something I think you'd have to ask the people involved. They haven't told us. The suspects in this case, they've never really come out and explained why. We can make a lot of assumptions, but I think that's probably the biggest thing we're all left with, is just trying to understand how something so just senseless and just horrendous could happen. That was a search that was done with the permission of the homeowners, which certainly limits our ability to look everywhere that we would want to look. We went everywhere we can, but there's certain limitations when somebody gives you permission to search their home. We can't destroy property. We obviously can't. We can't open anything if they say, "Hey, not there." You can't do that, and I don't think it's reasonable for them, for a homeowner, to allow us to start opening and actually destroying property to search inside of it.
So in that initial search that the homeowner consented to, the missing persons detectives did look at the mattress, but
Absolutely.
They didn't find Mary's body.
Absolutely. So they looked, under the mattress along with the homeowners. There was nothing that was apparent at that time, and this is really at this time the second time someone has searched the house. So the family's been in the home. We've now been in the home. We didn't see anything that was apparent, and unfortunately, we were limited to what we could search, like we discussed.
How did they miss finding Mary's body, though?
Mary was very well concealed, and I think some of that's reflected in the court record. When we ultimately went in with a search warrant, it wasn't even immediately apparent to us at that time until we began, looking a little bit more closely at things, searching things and looking to an extent that we wouldn't be able to do with the homeowner's permission. We ultimately had to open up the mattress in order to find her.
You actually had to physically open up the
She
mattress.
was fully concealed inside of the mattress. Yes, ma'am.
I think most people think, though, a body weighs a certain amount, so you lift a mattress and there'd be something unusual about it.
Sure, it's just, the way everything played out, it wasn't obvious. And I can tell you that even my folks, when they went back with the search warrant, I mean, they were shocked at how well she was concealed.
Wow. What does that tell you then about?
I think there's a lot of thought that went into this as far as how to hide her and try to conceal what their crime was. I think that they also were willing to speak with us and with family, which is fairly unusual for people who have done something that's just so horrific.
Not just speak with, they actually consented to a search and sort of stood there.
Sure.
What does that say about someone's mindset?
They were out asking for help in finding her to people in the neighborhoods. So they just don't seem to care. I don't know how you would live with that and do that and go about talking to the family and trying to be supportive, knowing the truth the entire time.
They were putting on a show.
Absolutely.
After all of this information came out, more and more people came forward to tell their experiences with the group, especially with Kelly Lavery. Some people who had previously been friends with Kelly said that she had bullied Mary online for years and that she had a very bizarre obsession with knives. There were even long videos on her phone of her just sitting and playing with knives, not talking to anyone, just messing around with them. Evidence surfaced of Kelly targeting other girls as well, including another one of Lavi's ex-girlfriends. Lavi had previously dated another girl for nearly 3 years when he cheated on her and got with Kelly. So Kelly started harassing Lavi's ex, saying things like, "I got your man," and taunting her for no reason after she was probably already heartbroken and feeling betrayed. Just very cruel, very callous. And there really aren't enough words to describe how pathetic Kelly is. The audacity of a side piece to then antagonize a fellow woman whose heart has been broken, or at the very least will have some trust issues, is just vile. Like, girl, you were the other woman. Don't get it twisted. She really thinks stealing this guy is a flex. But no offense, Lavi was not some hot ticket item. To be honest, they really are just the perfect couple, and they deserve each other. Some other text messages surfaced where Kelly asked Mary if she was bisexual, and she said no. Another person that Kelly used to be friends with came forward and claimed that Kelly tried to get her to have a threesome with her on several occasions, and once she even saw her and her boyfriend using knives during intercourse. Other people who knew Kelly in the past say that she has always been the type of person who just had to be in control of everything, that she was a master manipulator, only cared about money and status, and would do absolutely anything to have a leg up on somebody else, especially someone who she deemed as threatening. I mean, just look at the quote that she came up with to put in her high school yearbook. I mean, big yikes. Some have claimed that it seemed as though Kelly wanted to initiate sex with friends, to have some weird power dynamic over them, or have something to hold against them later. Maybe the fact that Mary was so beautiful and used to date Lavi made Kelly jealous, and she wanted to somehow prove her dominance, or something weird like that. But what was Lavi's excuse? I can see those two creatures sitting around having a conversation about how Mary would never get physical with Lavi when they were in their relationship, and maybe that made them feel like Mary thought she was better than them. Maybe Kelly then made it her mission to get Mary to engage with them sexually, like, you couldn't make her do it, but I can. Then when Mary clearly wasn't interested, both of their egos were bruised and they just couldn't handle it. It just seems like such a drastic response to someone not wanting to sleep with you. I feel like there must have been more than just a sexual motive here. Maybe Kelly hated and was insanely jealous of Mary's sweetness and her innocence, which clearly Kelly had none of, and it was the complete opposite of the type of person that Kelly was or could ever be. And maybe she just couldn't stand seeing someone so pure, so beautiful, and she wanted to do everything she could to taint that somehow. Another person who knew Kelly came forward to speak with police after Mary was found dead. She said that Kelly had actually joked about killing Mary in the past, but the only reason she kept her around was because, and I quote, Mary was the one friend who never wanted anything from her. Ultimately, I think the fact that Mary wasn't someone to use a person, regardless of how much money they had, is something that made her a better friend than Kelly had probably ever experienced. However, it also meant that Mary couldn't be manipulated, wowed, or made to do things based on Kelly's wealth. It meant that Kelly couldn't control her. After all of the evidence against Kelly came out in court, the text messages, the details of the crime scene, witness accounts, and so much that pointed to premeditation, Kelly and her legal team realized that the only chance she'd ever have at seeing the light of day again was to strike a deal. Mary's family was very strongly against this. They wanted to go all the way to trial, and they believed that a jury would see Kelly for who she was and what she did, and that they would sentence her to life. However, against the family's wishes, the prosecution struck a deal with Kelly. On June 30th, 2022, Kelly Lavery pled guilty to second-degree murder, kidnapping, and concealment of a human body, and she was sentenced to a mere 25 to 30 years in prison. Now, if that wasn't a big enough slap in the face, Kelly made a statement to Mary's family. This statement said, "To the friends and family of Mary Collins, I'm so sorry that you're hurting. Mary's death is a tragedy. It never should have happened. I wish there was something I could do to take away your pain or make things okay. I know that's not within my power and that nothing I say can change the past. But I do want to pray for you today in hopes that a higher power may ease your suffering and give you the grace to keep going even when it seems impossible. I pray that you find a place of forgiveness in your hearts, not for my sake, but for your own peace of mind so this tragedy doesn't harden your hearts or change the way you look at the world. I pray that you find the strength to face each day, that you experience moments of hope and happiness to help you make it through. I pray that all those who are grieving her loss find community with another. Finally, I want to pray for Mary, that she is in peace and that she knows I am so sorry for what happened to her. Her spirit will never be forgotten. In the name of the Holy Trinity, amen." Okay. It just makes me fume reading that. Honestly, there are no words to even describe how evil of a person Kelly is. Her trying to say a prayer for Mary and her family is the biggest crock of BS, especially after learning that she has an actual burning church tattoo on her body. The only question I have for her is, how's Daddy's money working for you now that you're in prison? Is he helping your books, putting money on your books? How's the commissary treating you? Also, for her to say, "I'm so sorry what happened to you," it didn't happen to her. You did it to her. It's not something that just happened. You did it.
Tonight, we are learning about new developments in one of Charlotte's most disturbing murder cases. Mary Collins was stabbed more than 100 times in a bizarre killing back in 2020. The first of 4 defendants in the case got a plea deal, and some in the young woman's family were devastated a jury didn't hear the case.
Mary's grandmother trusting only our Michelle Bowden with the family's story. And so, Michelle, was this deal prompted by the pandemic backlog?
The answer is not cut and dry, because even before COVID, most cases were resolved with a plea deal. But there is no question the number of murder suspects awaiting trial is growing for a number of reasons.
I'm destroyed. There's no language for how I'm doing.
Mia Alderman struggles to talk about the granddaughter she raised as a daughter. Mary Collins was just 20 when she disappeared the week of the COVID lockdown back in 2020. She was found in a Noda apartment days later. She'd been stabbed 133 times, her body stuffed in a mattress.
What they did to Mary, what she went through, the depravity, the level of just the heinous, horrible things they did to her, and that I wasn't there, and I couldn't stop them.
4 people were charged in the case. Kelly Lavery, the first in court, got a plea deal, agreeing to a second-degree murder charge. A judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison.
She deserves to be in prison for life. It was shocking enough when we were told there would be no death penalty trial.
We also spoke with Mary's mother by phone. She told us while she would have preferred Lavery spend life in prison, she knew a deal was a sure thing, and Lavery would definitely serve time. She says prosecutors warned the family the growing number of accused murderers, a staffing shortage in the DA's office, and COVID backups meant a trial could be a long way off and a gamble. A spokeswoman for the DA's office told us, quote, plea arrangements provide crime victims and their families a level of finality that they may not receive with a trial, particularly by avoiding the inherent uncertainties involved in the outcome of any given jury trial. Our office offers plea arrangements in nearly every case and has done so even before experiencing pandemic-related court closures.
I remember putting my hands over my ears, trying not to hear.
Alderman says they were all shocked, first to hear a plea deal was on the table, then to learn some of the previously unreleased details of what happened to Mary.
They said that Mary had a dog leash around her neck in a bathtub, bloody, stabbed. There was an audible gasp in the courtroom and we started crying.
She says that new horrific detail only made the plea deal harder to accept.
Nobody is going to tell me that Mary's life, the value of her life, is 25 years. Mary matters more than that.
2 of the 3 suspects remain in jail awaiting trial. A third suspect is out of jail while she too awaits trial.
Now, as much of a relief as it is that Kelly will be in prison for a very long time, no time would be long enough for what she orchestrated against Mary. Even though she pled guilty, Kelly's little minions have all seemed to take a different approach. Now, I'm not really sure how any of them think that a jury of rational people will see the evidence, including text messages on all of their phones about the murder and all of their phones pinging at the apartment during the time of Mary's death, and will somehow find any of them not guilty, but okay. The prosecution was initially willing to make a deal with Lavi as well, but after Kelly's sentencing, they took that opportunity off the table. But apparently, Lavi didn't want to take a deal anyway. He wants his case to go to trial. And to be honest, I say let him. Let that idiot sit there while all of what he did is displayed to a courtroom, probably filled with people he knows as well as Mary's family. Let them have the opportunity to get real justice for Mary, which would be nothing less than life in prison rather than giving him a deal of sorts. Mary wasn't given a deal, and no one in this case should be given one either. At this point, Lavi Pham is still awaiting his trial, which currently has no definitive date due to the Mecklenburg court system still being so far behind after COVID. I'm talking it could be years before Mary's case has its day in court. That wouldn't be such a bad thing if all of the defendants were awaiting trial in jail. But in yet another gut punch to Mary's family, both Jimmy Salerno and America are currently out on bond. That's right, one of the people being charged with murder and kidnapping, and one being charged with being an accessory after the fact and the concealment of a body, are out on bond. Make it make sense. America's defense team did their best to make her seem like just a young girl who made some bad decisions. They said that she is suffering in jail because she has diabetes and can't care for it the way that she would at home, and she could be spending her time getting a job or going to school, which, I'm sorry, but I'm sure Mary would like to spend her time going to school or maybe one day getting a job, but she won't because of you guys, thanks to you. So America was released on a $100,000 bond back on September 18th, 2021. Meaning she only had to pay around $10,000. And she's currently pretty much just free to do whatever she wants and live her life as if nothing ever happened. Even though she is clearly a flight risk, considering the first thing that she did after Mary was reported as missing was flee to Colorado. Remember? North Carolina has also decided to stop utilizing ankle monitors, so America was released with no conditions. On January 13th, 2023, Jimmy Salerno reported to court for a bond hearing. Even though Mary's family showed up and begged for the judge not to grant him a bond based on the absolutely heinous nature of the accused crimes and for the safety of the public, it didn't matter. Regardless of their pleas, the judge granted him a $250,000 bond. Jimmy remained in jail until June 15, 2023, when his family posted his bond, and he is currently out in the public with no conditions. According to one criminal defense attorney in Mecklenburg County, there is a backlog of cases in the county, meaning that it can take years to get to trial. Since criminal defendants are considered innocent until proven guilty, keeping them locked up during that time could constitute a miscarriage of justice. If that person sits in jail for, say, 7 years denied bond, that will cost 7 years of his life. At the end of the day, the courts always seem to put the comfort and needs of everyone else ahead of the victim and the victim's family. It's not the victim's fault that there is a backlog of cases. It's not society's fault that the courts are backed up for years. Somehow, in other states, we've seen high-profile, very serious cases be given priority, so that people who are accused of such heinous crimes aren't just sitting in prison for years and years without bond. So why is Mary's case, which has been seriously underreported on anyway, why is it not being given priority? The entire system has failed Mary's family the moment that she went missing. The least they could do now is not let the people who stole her life just go about their normal lives like nothing happened. In situations like the recent Corey Richins case, she's accused of poisoning her husband. Remember, the woman who wrote the grief book. A very horrible and disgusting thing to do, but it's not excessively violent. It's not prolonged sexual crimes or anything like that, or sadistic physical torture of a developmentally delayed person. And even the judge in her case believed that she was too much of a danger to society to allow her out on bond. So how is it that someone being accused of assisting in one of the most gruesome murders against a vulnerable member of society can be let out on bond? Jimmy has not displayed an ounce of remorse or even empathy for Mary and her family, and his own family was basically laughing, gloating, and celebrating when he was released on bond. They did that right in front of Mary's family. And when one of her family members said, "There is nothing to laugh about here," Jimmy's dad basically tried to square up with them in the courtroom. Like, hello, I think we can see where Jimmy gets his personality from. Real great example, real great.
On for a murder suspect. Tonight, the family of Mary Collins tells WBTV they feel like the court system failed them.
Jamie, this past weekend, WBTV first learned one of the suspects charged with Collins' murder has been released from jail. We first told you in January a judge granted a $250,000 bond on the murder charge to James Salerno. All new now at 6, our Brandon Hamilton is talking with Mary Collins' family about this latest development. He's live in Noda, where Mary was killed. Brandon, how is her family doing tonight?
Molly, they are angry. In fact, Mary's grandmother tells me they were quite emotional learning that James Salerno had bonded out of jail. She is talking with us tonight so that you and I do not forget Mary's name. Now, I do want to warn you, the details you're about to hear about Mary's murder are graphic.
Revulsion. I can't think of a better word.
Strong words from this grandmother about North Carolina's court system. Hours after finding out this man, James Salerno, was released from jail on bond.
I was just enraged.
Salerno is one of 4 people accused in the March 2020 murder of Mia Alderman's granddaughter, Mary Collins. The 20-year-old was found at a Noda apartment days after she was reported missing.
These people need to be held accountable for what they've done, because you can just stab somebody over 133 times, bash their head in, force drugs down her throat, and do other unspeakable things to her, kill her and take her and wrap her in plastic, hide her in a mattress, and take her from us.
Salerno has pled not guilty to charges of murder, kidnapping, and concealing a death. Alderman says silence is not an option. She says she feels because Mary had a disability, people have forgotten about her.
Mary matters, just like every other human being that has been murdered in the city of Charlotte.
Now her mission, pushing so that if someone is charged with murder, there is no bond.
If you have enough evidence to jail somebody, arrest them and put them in jail, and have them await a sentence or a trial for first-degree murder, then they shouldn't be out walking the street where they can hurt somebody else.
And Molly, Jamie, since that April 2020 death, Mary's family has been pushing for that change. Mia tells me that she is planning to go to Raleigh to help push and make change in North Carolina when it comes to an alert system for people with disabilities who are missing. Now, late this evening, we also learned from the court that there are no conditions on that bond, which against Solano was released just this weekend.
Mary's grandmother, Mia, did a recent interview with Law&Crime Network where she talked about Mary and the case, and how there are actually so many more details that haven't even been released to the public due to 3 of the trials still being ongoing. She also spoke about an organization that she and her family have started in honor of Mary to hopefully raise awareness and pass legislation for a new alert system that will alert the public when a disabled person goes missing or is in danger. Currently, people like Mary are often lumped in with the silver alert system, even though a silver alert wasn't even put out when she was reported as missing anyway. So Mia doesn't know whether or not an alert would have made a difference for Mary or not, but it would have made it so that the police would have been immediately compelled to enter Lavi and Kelly's apartment, similarly to how an Amber Alert works when a child goes missing. Mary, who had overcome so many of her speech difficulties, still did not have the ability to scream, and there would have been no way for her to scream out for help when that group of monsters were torturing and murdering her. She had worked so hard to find her voice, and Kelly, Lavi, Jimmy, and America all played a role in stealing her voice away from her. For that reason, her family has named the organization Mary's Voice. And currently their #1 goal is to get justice for Mary, who meant so much to them and so many other people. Like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to cover this case again because, like I said at the beginning of this video, all Mia and the rest of Mary's family want is for people to know what happened to her, to demand justice for her, and to make sure that nothing like this can ever happen again. In one quote from Mia's recent interview, she stated, "Today, the justice system is basically made up of plea deals. It doesn't matter the charge, it's all about plea deals. But some things rise above the level of, let's make a deal." And with that, I couldn't agree more. She wants the justice system to see that Mary isn't disposable. And I want her to know that to me, and I'm sure most of you watching, her life is worth so much more than some unwarranted deal. Even though it may be a long time before we see any actual justice in this case, I'm going to keep a very close eye on any updates. Maybe the more attention that Mary's story gets, the more likely the Mecklenburg court system will be to move the trials along. And because her family wants more awareness, more people speaking about this, please take 5 seconds, guys. Share the link to this video on your social media, on your new Threads account with Instagram, on Twitter, in your family group chat, your friends group chat, anywhere you can to get Mary's voice out there, Mary's story heard, so that these monsters not only can be held accountable, but while they're out free on bond gallivanting around, that they can be avoided so that they don't have more victims in the future and so that people don't become a victim of theirs. It's horrific. Thank you, Drift, for sponsoring today's video. And guys, don't forget to check out the link in my description to get 55% off your first month. I know that this was a very long video, a very tough one to listen to, so I appreciate you sticking with me. And as I mentioned, I will keep you updated on this, but please do your part and share this wherever you can and keep Mary's family in your thoughts and prayers. All right, guys, until the next case, stay safe.